The business of business and the business of life are one and the same. How in the world could I be so cheated that Christ lived 2,000 years ago? And here I am, feeling lost. But after having seen Swami a second time in my meditation room, I was now on a mission to find who he was, not even knowing his name. When he looks into your eyes, when he takes a letter from you, when he walks close to you, something begins to happen. If you're seeking an answer, then I strongly recommend that you come here and seek silence.
Today I have some very good news for you because we have the pleasure of having with us in our studios Mr. James Sinclair. He is a devotee who has been seen very often, but he is hardly ever heard. That's because he is, by disposition and choice, a very silent person. And the depth of his silence is a measure of his devotion to Bhagavan. I have great, deep personal regard for him, and I'm dying to know some things about, how we should really be devoted to Bhagavan seriously and in an intense manner, totally, and yet be immersed in the activities of the world. So welcome, sir, but before we get on to what I would say, deep spirituality, may I begin, as I always do, or most of the time, by requesting you to tell us something about how you came to Swami. I have, of course, had glimpses of it. I heard about it once in Tryst, but I think the world also needs to know. Maybe you could start with Radio Sai disappearing into the wall and end up with young baby Krishna, if I've got it right, if I've got the sequence right. Over to you, sir.
Well, you have some of the stories, certainly, and let me start at the beginning of the first question, and it will work into the way, not that I found Sai, but rather Sai found me. The business of business and the business of life are one and the same. And to bring the infinite possibility out of any individual is extremely simple. It's that understanding, one, that infinite possibility exists within you, and two, discovering a way in which that infinite possibility can emerge. Now as to how Sai found me. It's quite simple. As a young man driving down the West Side Drive to go to the office as a market maker, that's a person who actually creates the market and securities for 35 different companies. At the age of 20, I used to pray on my rosary beads because I felt very cheated. How in the world could this Christian boy be riding down the West Side Drive and his incarnation of God.
West Side Drive in New York City.
Yes, it is.
Which year was that roughly?
Late 50s.
Late 50s.
How in the world could I be so cheated that Christ lived 2,000 years ago? And here I am, feeling lost and praying my rosary beads because I had this feeling, I don't know where you are, I don't know who you are, but I know you are. And I can't find you. So you better find me. And in fact, my prayers were answered. And there are many experiences, as you noted. The most dramatic of all was actually seeing Swami in my home in Connecticut. And Swami is, in his person unusual. And you have to understand that if you've never seen Swami before, and if you're a Westerner without a great deal of knowledge of Eastern philosophy and culture, then when you first saw Swami in your home, it would be a shock. So as some people said that, they would hear cherubs and there would be beautiful music, I'd rather say my hair looked like Swami's hair. But after having seen Swami a second time in my meditation room, because I did meditate, and this time having Swami allowed me to touch him, he was as real as you are sitting across the table. I was now on a mission to find who he was, not even knowing his name.
Can I interrupt you? How many years after your West Side Drive prayers was this?
Well, that was the 50s, and that was 30 years later.
30 years later?
Yes.
And you were praying all these 30 years?
I was, yes.
And after 30 years, he revealed himself?
To find God. To find what life was about.
And the second time you actually touched him?
Yes, I did. He made a motion for me to touch his feet, and I did. And then began the campaign of trying to find out who this individual was. And that campaign tends to lead to a store in New York, which at that time was the center of all texts dealing with spiritual matters and probably some texts dealing with unusual matters. And so I asked the attendant at the store by describing what this person looked like. And he said, well, one moment. Walked back into behind, came out with the book, The Holy Man and the Psychiatrist, with a bag of vibhuti, and told me that he was a devotee of Sri Sathya Sai Baba.
Holy Man and Psychiatrist by Sandwich.
Correct. And that was the beginning. And eventually I found my way to India, not really having the courage to come because I hadn't traveled in this area. And I was on business with a partner of mine in London when I became overcome with the desire to go to India. And I left my partner and my wife at that time as they were going to return from the trip, waved goodbye to them, told them I was on my way to India. And the end result of that was when I showed up over here, looking something like Sammy Davis Jr. with all my jewelry on. I think if I recall, I had on a winter blue blazer, a pink shirt, a polka dot tie, pair of gray slacks, wingtip shoes. It was terribly warm. I was carrying an overcoat and dragging a bag behind me, which was leaking because somebody said that I should bring some water. So clearly, coming into an ashram like this, I must have looked like the most classic lost soul on earth. And
the year was?
That was 85.
85.
Yes. And that was the beginning. Because what I've learned here is not intellectual. What I've learned here is quietude. What I've learned is not from his discourses, although there's much to be learned, but from the glances in his eyes. From simply breathing the same air, from being in a proximity, and finding out that his life is in fact his message. Recognizing that there's nothing to do except cease stopping something wonderful from happening. Knowing without a doubt that the business of life and the business of business and the business of family and the business of time are all the same.
Can I ask you a question? You said you learned a lot just by observing. There are millions of us who are here more often than you are. In fact, I live here. We see him. How come we missed? It's almost like Holmes and Watson. So you must tell us the trick, Mr. Holmes.
I don't know that there's a trick. All I know is that in most things in the human experience, people can be too close to item of observation to really observe.
What is it that you observe?
When he looks into your eyes, this process begins. Mm-hmm. When he touches you physically, mm-hmm. when he speaks to you, mm-hmm. when he takes a letter from you, when he walks close to you, something begins to happen.
Can I say that unless the individual is properly prepared, he will miss this experience?
But Swami, gives very simple instructions for that preparation.
What is that?
Watch and be happy. In fact, this is so simple that it must be divine because humans make things complex.
That's true.
And when Swami says watch, I take it literally. I think that Swami in his instructions, if the word is not contained in the dictionary of the language he's speaking in, will define that word so you'll understand. So Swami gives the instructions, watch, and that's why he gives gifts many times of a watch, because it's a living instruction of observation. To stand back and simply watch words, action, thought, character, heart, all the aspects of humanity. Then he says, be happy. But he defines one word in all of that, happy, unity with divinity. Now, if we go to the dictionary and look up what the word be means, it simply isness. So if one would simply watch, then something would occur that would result in unity with divinity.
You're a man of business, and you're, if I'm not mistaken, actively involved in business too.
Extremely so.
Okay. Now, business has its ups and downs.
Of course.
Okay, it's easy for an individual to be happy, possibly in a worldly sense, when there is success. But what happens when there is a problem or even failure? How is one to be happy?
Well, failure can be an opportunity because very simply when everything goes along swimmingly, positively, abundantly, we tend to forget what we're really trying to build, as it were. When you have a problem, don't you pray? Don't you hang on to the feet of the Lord? So if a person wants to have a more even life, if that's possible, then wouldn't it make a great deal of sense to hang on to his feet when things are good? Because then the purpose of fear, the purpose of lack, the purpose of pain, the purpose of separation becomes less necessary in the human experience, which only has one purpose. And the purpose of humanity is union with divinity, according to Baba. The message is extraordinarily simple. And yes, I'm very much involved in business. But I firmly believe that success in the business environment is not a product of what you do, but a product of what you are. And the product of what you are is a product of watch and be happy. And I also firmly believe in my life that every single event is a gift. And I don't have the ability to define for you what that gift means. Some of it hurts terribly. Some of it's pleasing. But every single event in my life to this point, and I've had some shocking events, has done nothing to me, but has done something for me. So why should it change? I believe in treating my employees like family. But even a father, loving his family, has a duty at times to be stern, to make decisions, to make corrections. So if one was to reward production and punish non-production, wouldn't he be a good father? Success has nothing to do with how you strategize. Success is like air. It's abundant. You can breathe it in. I don't believe in recessions or depressions unless they're in your mind. Because if you approach life in the manner of instructions you receive here, in their absolute simplicity, then I firmly believe that every listener here will reach the highest possible destiny that they can.